in the lesson to really highlight that relationship. Now, in lesson 26, we are going to move into some additional work with 10. This one's this is a fun one. In both lessons, we're going to be working with a color change at 5. And in lesson 26, we're going to be making bracelets. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of ideas for making those bracelets. Melanie and I have a couple things to share with you. Melanie's got her lovely bracelet on. You can see this it really reminds us a lot of our Rec and Rec, right? With 5 red beads and 5 white beads. The fantastic thing about the bracelets are that students can use them to explore partners to 10, much like they do with the Rec and Rec. So with the bracelets, you can take, they're going to be exploring, they can take 1 bead and move it to, and hide it sort of on their bracelet, and then count how many beads do we have left. And they'll find that they have, of course, 9 beads left, and then they move another. And they'll see that they have 8 beads left. So they can explore partners to 5 that way. So we see Melanie working with the bracelet, and you can see with Melanie's wrists that sometimes it's a little bit hard to see all of the beads at once. And if you can imagine little 5-year-old wrists, it can be really, really tough. So what Melanie's showing you is an example of using an elastic band and making a bracelet with an elastic band and just putting it over like a little cardboard or a foam board sheet. And you could do the exact same thing that we were doing with the wrist, right? Just moving some of the beads to the back so that you can see the 2 partners, so you can hide them. So that can be really, really helpful. If you are making bracelets for students to use in class or to take home, you can use pipe cleaners, or I think chenille stems is the more PC way to talk about these. If you do that, one of the things that you, of course, have to worry about with little ones is the fact that once they get the beads on, they fall off the other side, right? So just take the end of the pipe cleaner and kind of loop it around. That'll solve that problem, and it will also give you a way to poke this through and fit the bracelet to the student's arms once you finish it. You don't have to use red and white, but that connection with the Rec and Rec can be really helpful. So Melanie is showing you that Rec and Rec, and that's a tool we're going to be using throughout the year, and that students will continue to use in other years as well. So making that connection with the color change at 5. And you can also see with good Rec and Recs, there will be a color change between 50 and 60, or 5 10s and 6 10s. So keep that in mind as you're making considering Rec and Rec purchases, or if you're building your own Rec and Rec. Okay. And again, that color change helps us because it helps us see that 5 plus N pattern, and it helps with that ability to subitize and conceptually subitize our numbers. Okay. One thing I want to make sure that you know before you walk away from this lesson is that this lesson is not intended for our students to totally master their partners to 10. We are going to cover this a lot more in Module 4. So right now we're just introducing 10. We're introducing this model and introducing 10 as, this pattern of 10 is 5 and 5. There will be lots and lots of time for us to explore partners to 10 within the context of addition and subtraction and number bonds when we get to Module 4. So don't linger in this lesson if your students are not demonstrating mastery. That is not the intention. We're just starting that exposure at this point. All right, in lesson 27, you can see that we are doing some very, very familiar things. They're going to have an opportunity to practiced in all of the different configurations that we've become used to here: the circular configuration, an array configuration, and a scattered configuration. The things that we're doing with 10 are very similar to the things that we've done with numbers 6, 7, 8, and 9 previous lessons.
Lesson 28 is a great lesson because it introduces a new mathematical model to students. We're going to introduce them to the number path. We're going to use the number path as a mechanism for acting out stories. So let's go ahead and look at how this is done. In the real lesson, you'll have a number path laid on the floor. Use construction paper to create each spot in the path. You'll ask students to come up and act out the story on the number path. For the demonstration purposes here, we're going to use beans as students. So Melanie's going to show you what it might look like with your student. Just pretend that there's a little smiley face in each of those beans to represent a kid. All right. Today we are going to go through a story. So all of you who are on the number path, I want you to listen. I want you to act out the story as I say it, okay? There are 10 kids, and they are walking through the forest. They're walking on a path. They're walking to go camping. They've been walking so long. 5 of them, they really need to sit down. So 5 students sit down. Okay, and then I'm going to ask the student, how many kids are sitting down? 5. How many kids are standing up? 5. You're going to count them, right? And then how many kids are on the path altogether? 10. So I'm giving them an opportunity, and in each case, they can count to figure out how many kids are on the path, how many kids are sitting on the path, how many kids are standing. So essentially, we're talking about parts and wholes here without really getting into what a part and a whole is, which we'll get into in more detail in Module 4. Let's keep going with our story. Okay, now those 5 kids, they get back up and they start walking again. Got everybody walking and walking. Oh, they're almost at the campsite. And you know what? The last 2 people realize their shoes are untied. So they stop and bend down to tie their shoes. Okay. How many kids are tying their shoes? Just say 2. And how many kids are still standing, waiting? And they'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And how many kids are on the path? And they may remember that there are 10, but they may also need to count to get to that whole. And you can continue on like that. So this is an opportunity for students to understand what the number line is and see it in real life, and also act out some stories. These stories are going to become story problems. And as we move through the kindergarten year, students will be able to start to explain those story problems and create equations. But that's a little ways down the path. So we're starting this now. We're introducing the model, and students will continue to use that as we move through the year. Now, why do we use the number path instead of the number line? Well, there's a really important reason for this. The number line is a little ambiguous for students in pre-K, K, and 1. So we don't actually start using the number line until grade 2. The reason for this is because it's hard to know where each number lies on a number line. So students get confused about whether they're counting the spaces between lines or whether they're counting the lines. And so they get mixed up, and oftentimes we'll start counting at 0, 1,